Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. We are going to talk about personal branding today, one of my favorite subjects. I am here with Stefanie Blue. She is a leading personal branding photographer. She's here in San Diego, and she creates gorgeous, personality-driven images that allow her clients to shine online, from social media cover jackets to magazine covers. She has an educational background in psychology and social work, which we're going to talk about because it's very, very interesting career path as she stepped into photography at actually quite a young age and has been an entrepreneur for many years. So we'll get her advice on that. She is amazing at making clients feel comfortable and at ease, which is so important when you are doing things like headshots or personal brand photography, because as women, we're not always as confident as we should be. So throughout the photo shoot process, she makes sure to make her clients feel beautiful and welcome and create images that really resonate with their target audience. So welcome to the show today, Stefanie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive in. We always like to go back in time. So tell us your story. Where are you from? Let's get into this psychology degree that you received and your social work. And then we'll, of course, bring it up to current day and talk about your business.
Sure. Well, I grew up in Ohio, but by the time I started kindergarten, we moved to Arizona. And I don't actually remember too much about the Midwest. I grew up in a small town. It was really, really hot in Arizona. And by the time I had my son, I decided that was too hot of a place to raise my kid. And we ended up moving to San Diego.
Good choice. Good choice.
Much, much better weather. And when I got here, I was going to school already and went into learning about psychology. One of my favorite shows a couple of my favorite shows as a kid was the Bob Newhart show, where he was a psychologist. And I also loved Bewitched because Darren was in marketing. So those are a couple of things that kind of set what I wanted to do when I grew up. And I got my degree in psychology, went on for a master's in social work, and worked 7 years postgraduate as a child protective services worker. So I got to understand the dynamics of families and all of that, but I needed some self-care. So I really got back into photography, did that alongside the social work for a while. And finally, in about 2009, I was able to step away completely from that career into full-time work as a photographer.
So I want to pause before we get into the world of photography. And you've been doing this for quite some time. You talked about, I mean, that's an intense role that you had in the world of social work, and using that opportunity to come back to photography as self-care. Will you elaborate on that a little bit of just, what that was like for you, and also talk about, I mean, this is work. I'm sure that it's important work. I'm sure it's work you loved, but very challenging, of course, child protective services. Talk about that decision to leave that. I mean, you have your degree in that. You've been doing that for 7 years. Was that a hard decision? So I'll let you take it away from there.
It was definitely a challenging decision financially to go from the stability of a regular paycheck and benefits. But the day-to-day work, it was really hard to get away from it because I was a case-carrying worker. The families that you're dealing with, some parents would step up to the plate and do what they needed to according to the court for their kids. Some wouldn't. So there's a lot of disheartening aspects to it. There were definitely some rewarding pieces as well. But it is something that because there are a lot of darker sides that you're seeing, I did not want that to color my worldview.
Mm.
And so the self-care, especially when I started working with maternity clients and newborns, that's where I really got my start with the photography. And so you're seeing a whole different side of family functioning, and that in itself kind of balanced what I was seeing. But the more I started getting into networking and stuff, it kind of developed into more working with people for their businesses and their branding, and that kind of has morphed over the years. It morphed rather quickly, but that's kind of the sweet spot where I enjoy things now. But it was definitely not easy walking away from the benefits, and you don't get paid time off as an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something that I found rewarding and also purpose-driven. And I've got to say that my social work background has really been one of the main things that people are like, you're always so calm, you make me feel comfortable, because I have learned a lot of those interpersonal skills.
Yeah, I would imagine. So all in all, Stefanie, how long have you been an entrepreneur?
I would say since at least 2005
Okay.
is when I started branching out into photography. But I've also made jewelry and some other things. The crafty art side of me has been present since I was a kid. I've been doing things, on the side as hobbies, probably since longer than that. So, I don't know, 15 years.
Awesome. Well, you are definitely a creator. Let's get into, you've been in photography, brand photography, all types of different photography throughout that 15 or so years. Talk about some of the things that you've seen change in the world of photography over that period of time.
Well, you can pretty much blink these days and things have changed. I think cell phones have been a major change factor. And even I get excited with the new cell phones and camera capabilities that they offer. There's something to be said, they still only produce at 72 DPI, so those images are not meant for print, but they are meant for sharing socially.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, there's good and bad to it. There's the ease of being able to just post right away versus taking something into Photoshop and doing your own digital darkroom work on them these days.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a big thing. I know with high school seniors, it used to be a really big thing to get your senior photos, and now kids will get their photos done and 2 days later they have a bathroom selfie that they changed out. So there's not the same kind of draw for some of those things. I think for parents, a lot of times it's still that sentimental. They understand the value of a portrait. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, in the next 20 years or so with people who have only grown up in this digital age.
Yeah, absolutely. And how have you seen, I know a lot of your work now is around personal branding. Talk about, and et cetera, right? But building that brand for yourself, your image, authors, speakers, professionals. Talk about the types of clients that you're working with. And, we're not just talking headshots, right? I mean, we hear that a lot. Like there's been a lot of evolution there as well as far as personal brand building. Talk about that a bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're the old school, the realtor headshot on the blue background, that's gone away, luckily. And people are doing a lot more environmental, a lot more lifestyle, where it's when they have their image online or on their website, it really gives people a glimpse of what it is to work with them. It's not just that stoic headshot that looks like you, but really where's the personality in it? So if they see you in your environment, at a chair, they can kind of get the idea of like what it would be like to have coffee with you or to have a chat with you. It's much more approachable, much more friendly. And then we balance that. I talk to people about their business before I photograph them. Say like, well, who are your clients? Because if you're a mortician or someone who handles really heavy stuff, we don't want you looking all like, hey, like you're a jolly good time, because, it needs to kind of fit who's going to be looking at you so that when they see your image, it really resonates with them. Like, this is my person.
Yeah.
there are people who have a more serious business, or they work with people at a serious time in their life, but maybe they still want the ones that still have a sense of humor. And so we'll kind of do a little blend so that it really hits the sweet spot.
Got it. Have you photographed any morticians?
No.
A good example to set the stage. Yes, I'm like,
it was an extreme just to make a point.
know.
But
yeah. So I'm just curious. I mean, you work with both men and women, but I know you work with a lot of women.
Yes.
Why do women, by and large, hate getting their picture taken? Or, professionally, the photo shoot scenario.
Right. I think women are generally hard on themselves. And, even I prefer the backside of the camera to the front. And when I do it, like, they worry about the pose or this and that, what can be nip tucked, this outfit, or I don't like when I'm sitting. So there's so many things that go through women's minds, and they could go through the men's. They just don't see any evidence of it, or they don't vocalize it as much. They're kind of like, here I am. So I think being able to be a woman and understand where they're coming from, or to give little tips and tricks in the posing, because you have the lighting, you have the posing, you have the wardrobe. And then if you still need stuff after that, there's Photoshop, and I'm good at, taking care of any extra. But if the photographer really understands how to pose and light someone, it already takes care of so much of that. And by the time they see the back of the camera during the shoot, they're like, oh, wow, that's me? And it's like, yes, because all those little things really play into it.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to be seen in the best light possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
So with that, are you typically, you talked about going outside, the kind of this lifestyle shots. How often are people typically updating these, or what is the recommendation?
Mm-hmm. I'd say if you go through a significant change in appearance, whether that's weight loss or hairstyle, you want to look, if they meet you at networking and then go to your site, you want to have some congruency there. But I'd say I see most of my clients about every 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Some, if they're on social media and really hitting it hard and they need a lot of visual content, then we can even shoot 3 to 4 times a year, depending on how much they're pumping out daily. But that really depends. If it's a static website, a couple of years. Obviously, the ones who are writing and in front of people and constantly pushing out content, they need a lot of images frequently.
Got it. Great. So what else have you seen change in your business, and what is, what's the future hold? You talked about, digital photography changing significantly. I also want to talk a little bit, so I'm going to put a pause on the future question here for a minute, because I know you have many passions. You talked about jewelry making. You also have a project that you've been working on called True Blue Women. Will you talk about that as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Inspiration Project is really with True Blue. The True Blue Women is one who has overcome obstacles that would likely just put someone in the fetal position in the corner, whether it's loss of a child, some addiction, poverty, things that, especially as a social worker, I understand it is really hard for a lot of people to bounce back from. And what my makeup artist and I teamed up to kind of work on this project to do a makeover, photograph these women who not only overcame it, but they're now sharing their story and inspiring others. And we've photographed about 40 women so far. Our goal is to have about 75. And to really create this book that tells a little bit about their story and what it is that they held on to that got them out of bed each day after this horrible, traumatic incident. And then what was it that they held on to that the reader and these moms that pick up the book and their daughters can say, you know what, that applies to me. I'm going to do that too. I get
Awesome.
goosebumps talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Such important work. Thank you for that, what you're doing there. So I'm excited to see this book.
Right?
And you're also a fine art photographer. You
I
make
am.
and sell your work. What are some of the inspirations there?
I love being out in nature. I love the connection with people when I'm doing the personal branding work, but that's me creatively representing their baby, their business and stuff. And so when I have time off and I can just go out and have some quiet time in nature, whether it's at the beach for landscape or waves or being in the garden with flowers, and just I love to kind of surprise people with what I get, but they're like, oh, would have walked right by that and never seen it that way. And I love when they have that moment, because I do, when people walk with me, they're like, wow, how did you see that? And stuff. And I love capturing that with my camera and then bringing that to them and just giving them that little like, oh, so that's fun for me.
Oh, awesome. Well,
That's how I nurture my soul.
absolutely. Yes. Well, your work is beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to touch on something too. I saw on LinkedIn, you have this thing called man tips. What is that?
Man tips. So when men are doing their photography with me, I occasionally get ones who are just absolutely willing participants. They've had a stylist, they're shopped, and they're ready to go. But there are a number of men who are doing it because the boss told them they had to, or their wife or their website designer told them they needed to, and they're just not as enthusiastic to get photos done. And a lot of times they will end up not shaving, little hairy places that they get, or how to dress, or dressing head to toe, because that carries through in the image. And so my man tips are just quick little guidelines. It's a fast little slideshow that just helps give some pointers to be prepared for the photo shoot.
I can see it now. Oh my goodness. Where women probably over prepare.
True.
Men.
Yes. Women are usually worried about the nails, the roots, and the whole package, and getting the hair blown out or whatever they need to do. But not to say that men can't do that too, but it seems in my experience that women spend a lot more time, and there are a number more appointments going before this. They want to have a lot of different outfits to change up their looks and their image online, versus men. And even some very high profile men I've seen, they'll use the same image for 5 years or so. And so they just don't seem to pay as much attention to that. Although, like I said, I've had a couple in the last few months that are really understanding how they can be leveraging social media and leveraging their image to get their message across. And that's really refreshing to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. Well, I know one of the things that you're excited about for the future is the True Blue Woman Project, excuse me. What else are you looking forward to? What's on the horizon? What's the future look like for you?
I do. I'm working on a branding book that kind of takes it a little bit deeper. So just kind of building out the services around the branding and the photography, because people come to me at all different stages. Some are starting a business, some are established but are wanting to refresh, and really just kind of providing a little bit more wraparound service for them, so that if I'm not partnering with people that they're already working with, I can provide a little extra for them. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and potentially some workshops as well.
Fun. Awesome. Well, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, Stefanie, what is the best way for them to do that?
The best way is to go to truebluebranding.sd.com. And from there's a contact form you can reach out, plus other information.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.